Um,
Right. Sister Chizo, thank you. Over
okay.
to you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Apologies for the late start. We're going to have Sister Portia do her presentation, and then we take it from there. Thank you very much, Sister Portia.
Thank you, Queen Sister. I won't be doing the geopolitical analysis this week given our time constraints, but there are some key events happening that I should say. So one of the first points is that right now, where I am, there has been an arrest of a Haitian immigrant in the United States of America. Now, all of the evidence shows that he brutalized and killed a clerk attendant. And right now, there is that increased tension in the area that I am because the point is they're saying that the immigrant was allowed in the country for extra time. In other words, he should have not been in the United States of America. So it has reached the federal level with current United States of America President Donald John Trump Jr. saying, commenting on Truth Social about it. ICE had a press conference um, on the 10th of April 2026. So there's evidence, there is outrage, and as we already know, with much of the images about Haiti, and again, I'm not justifying what this person has allegedly done. I'm saying that that increased tension, it is quite obvious where I'm at. And then the next thing is that they're saying that the with the resettlement of what some newspapers are terming Afrikaans, that has almost reached 4,000. So there is a cap on the amount under this agreement that can come in the country, and that admission cap is 77,500. So of that, almost 4,000 of them, except for three, are white Afrikaners, is what the newspaper is turning. They're saying, almost all U.S. refugees are now from South Africa as Trump focuses on Afrikaners. Now, again, this is a liberal newspaper, so I just need to mention that. And then the other thing is that there are elections happening throughout. Before I get into that, this is the week where it is the 1994 commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. And there are still remaining, pardon me one second. One moment, please.
Everything okay?
Yes, I'm just letting the woman talk in the background. I'm in the airport. Okay, let me wrap up. So there are two elections that are happening now on the continent, and one has declared victory. And so I'll give you the name of those those countries in a moment. But before that, I wanted to mention something very key related to the Alliance of the Sahel states. So now France is looking for a new uranium mine, and they are focused on Botswana. So this has been, this has been the talks have been ongoing, but they have met. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of the two, and please apologies for this. In terms of the two elections, let me get there, please. Okay, thank you so much for your patience. So in Djibouti, I'm going to spell his name Ismail Omar Guelleh is being elected to have won at 97.8%. While in Benin, and this is quite, I would urge us to look closely at this Benin election. There are two candidates who are focused on the presidency, and that is upcoming. I will yield there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Portia. Any questions, any comments? I've got one. I've watched this, well, two videos actually. One about the South Africans in going to the US. That video was saying, out of all the ones that went to America, they've all gone back because they don't like it there, which is different from what you've just presented. So you never know about these videos, whether they're genuine or not. And then also I was going to ask if, I don't know when this video came out about the interview with President Traore. I think it was a very powerful one, very touching. Obviously, it's a translated version to English, but I thought, I don't know whether it was, I wasn't here last Saturday, so I don't know whether it was discussed then. I just feel it's a very, very, very powerful message that goes to the whole Africa, to leaders, to young people, and to us all. Thank you.
Pardon me, Madam Chair. There's one thing I forgot. I won't, like I said, I won't go into the analysis, but there's something critical I forgot to share. I will be attending the 5th session of the United Nations Permanent Formal People of African Descent, and I went back and forth about whether to go. I urge, if you cannot attend, to at least look at the proceedings. And that is what I'll stop there. Thank you.
Sorry, what's that about?
It's the largest body at the UN on African and African diaspora issues. Now, many people have criticized the UN as being just a talk shop, and this forum that I just mentioned, the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, is no exception. And so this is one of the reasons I'm going to critique it, because there have been a lot of conclusions and recommendations, but at least from my vantage point on the ground, it is far removed from the realities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Sister Portia? Or we move to the next one? No, no hands up. Okay, is this Brother Pigeon's got something on the screen?
No, Sister Chisomo, that is the topic for today that I've just shared on the screen. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm on my phone, so it's usually very difficult to tell where
Yeah,
we're going with it.
Yeah, the topic is taxation, redistribution, and equality.
Okay. Are we here, Brother Pigeon? Christopher.
Yes,
Brother
Sister
Pigeon.
Chiso Mamara.
Okay. Do you want to get started if you're ready?
I thank you. I did a very small presentation on this. I didn't know, but I was preempting. Unless there's anybody who had an initial presentation, maybe we can know before I go ahead, but it will be very brief. So let me first of all know if there was somebody who also did the same, maybe research a bit on this.
Yes, son of the lake. Yeah, I did do some research on this, but I want to hear from you.
Okay, Chair. Now, should I go ahead, Chair?
Go ahead, Brother Pigeon.
No, thank you. Greetings to you all, comrades. I am informed, of course, that there was some few confusions here and there. We will try our best to ensure that do not happen. But Kwame, if you can allow me, let me just share briefly something I want to share. One is that on taxation.
I'm not chairing, brother. No, is chairing, so it's issue. It's she must address. Yeah, thanks.
On taxation, in terms of statistics and data about taxation, there's a commission called African Tax Administration Forum. So this is their website. So here you'll get all information about tax and analysis on taxes, which you may not have time to analyze currently, but there's a lot of what they have here in terms of the governance structure, how they coordinate taxation. You get information and report per each country's tax, whether it's internal or domestic taxation, per country, tax research information platform. So they have a lot of issues to do with tax. African Tax Research Network, African Multidisciplinary General Tax, Data Bank, African Tax Statistics, Tax Administration Library. So all these things are available within the African Tax Administration Forum, which I might not go in details on, but anybody who might have time any other time, you can feel free to check their information. So if you want to get tax per country, those who have reports on their annual reports, the latest report I was seeing is 2024, and it means the organization has been here for 15 years. They have the African Tax Outlook. So all these are publications they have, and anybody can go there to look at all that regional tax outlook, depending on where you want to get the information. Then, after mentioning that briefly, I was very fast to do something on a brief history of taxation. Mine was to look at it from different angle. So first I was looking at it from the, let me play the slide, so I was looking at it from the pre-colonial angle, but first of all, the key thesis for my bit research was on the historical deep dive of tax. My argument I was trying to present basically was to look at this tax in terms of taxation, redistribution, equality, but also the alternative for taxation. So that's basically what my presentation is about. The taxation, redistribution, equality, and the continental Africa. So historical level, I'll look at historical evolution, the current realities, and the pathways for resource-funded alternatives. So that's what my presentation is basically going to cover. So the historical deep dive, a bit of it, social or current situation, challenges and implications, the alternative for pushing off untaxed Africa, because I'm trying to push a narrative that Africa do not need to be taxed in terms of physical, because we have resources we can use. Then I will talk a bit on the policy recommendations. So those are the few things that I'm targeting to work on very fast on this slide. It's actually, I think, a 10-page slide. So looking at the historical level is that the pre-colonial taxation was a bit, we had some people giving either some grain, some livestock to the chief or whoever was the head of the village. Sometimes it was like a communal system. So each community or each house, once they harvest, they could pull together something into a common pool. So there were grains, there were livestock. Some people could even give their labor to serve the community. Some were even after the punishment, maybe if you have offended or you've done some offense, you'll be told to go work somewhere. So all these they were not purely seen as taxation, that they could be interpreted as the back then taxation system. So there were centralized kingdoms, for example, the Buganda and the Mali Empire, which had a record collection system. While there was stateless society also, which relied on voluntary contribution that fostered a social contract. So if you look, for example, in Buganda, taxes on cowrie shells and labor reinforced political authority. Their system was actually funding the public good. This taxing were going either to serve the public goods, for example, the traditional code, or even to support the protection, or even the soldiers or the what you call the officers who are guarding the territory or the kingdom could get something they could rely on in terms of eating or anything like that. So the taxation was then seen, but not in this punitive measure as it is today. And that's why if you look at the colonial era, we started to come up with what you call an extractive and dual system. So if you look at the colonial powers, they introduced what you call now the monetary taxation. And I remember in Kenya, there was hard tax and poll taxes. In some places, they even came up with the breast tax. They're taxing for every breast. I don't know what was the intention or their purpose to tax the breast of every woman. So probably, I don't know, they thought that if women are many, or if you marry many women, because there was a heart tax. The heart tax was depending on the number of women you marry, for example. So if you're polygamous and you have so many hearts, you'll pay for each heart. And I think this was a punitive measure to control our marriage or our polygamous system. There was somewhere that they said there was breast tax, and that was also punitive. But the issue was here to force a cash economy and labor for plantation. That's why they were introducing their taxation. It was actually a dual system that emerged where Africans paid both native and modern taxes, while settlers paid only modern taxes. And that was a very serious unfairness in the system. Revenue was also used for colonial administration, not for development. This led to high evasion and resistance. Remember the story of the Aba women in Nigeria. I think we were being told also of a story by Sister Ahmad. It was a story of other women. I think it was in Nigeria as well. But this era bred distrust and inherited weak fiscal capacity that still persists today. And if you look a bit to the period of the weakness in the structures of taxation, you realize that the post-independent period, countries now decide to inherit the same colonial fiscal structures. So we carried forward with taxation. But initial socialist experiment with the high taxes gave way a bit to liberalization focusing on VAT. However, low administrative capacity and a large informal sector, which was between 60 to 80% of the economy, remain unchallenged up to date. There are so many people are in informal sectors that the government still think that need to be taxed. But again, there was some decentralization and tech reforms that have occurred in this period. But revenue to GDP ratio have been stagnant until recent upticks. So we realize that the pre-colonial legacies like centralized areas showing higher modern compliance still influence today's systems. So there's a lot of people, even in the current monetary system, who are still believed not to be in the tax bracket. And people say that, in fact, it's been argument in some places that why are you making noise and you're not paying tax? In some countries, even they say that those who pay tax are the people who should vote. So there's a lot of that conversation. But there's a bigger sector in Africa, the informal sector, that's still not yet tapped to the tax regime within the continent. Now, if you look at the current situation, for example, you realize that there's low revenue and there's a lot of resource dependence. So Africa average tax to GDP was actually 16.1%. That was in 2023, which is very low to the global average. The composition is basically 30% of VAT and corporate tax with low personal income tax. So progress is still not that okay in that area. If you look at resource driven, some countries like oil exporters, for example, Gabon, saw an increment of 4.9%. However, there are still resources, the resource rents can mask structural weakness and in the tax base. And if you go ahead to maybe the effectiveness of redistribution, realize that taxes, sometimes what they say, and they've been campaigning all over, that tax the rich. So taxes reduce inequality modestly a bit by about maybe, according to their point, 3 to 4 Guinea points via personal income tax, far less than 10 points in Europe. But regressive elements like high VAT reliance burden the poor disappropriately. If you look, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, fiscal system redistribute less than 3% of the national income to the bottom, 50% compared to over 10% in the West. This undermines the social cohesion and growth. You realize that in most of African countries, those who run big companies don't pay tax. In fact, most of African governments will invite Western companies to come invest, and they will give you tax holiday and tax exemptions, things that they can't give internal or upcoming businesses in their country. Anybody start a business today, there was I think it was Dr. Eti mentioning in his book, Defeating Dictators, on how many certificates and chains of letters or approval you have to go through just to start a business in a country. And I think most of us have experienced this. What it takes for you to pay just to start a business. But the multinational companies are being invited and told, you have a tax holiday, come here, invest for free, we'll give you everything else you need. So high inequality in sub-Saharan Africa still exists. Actually, sub-Saharan Africa is among the world's most unequal regions, with the top 10% capturing about 55% of national income. South Africa is extreme, with the top 10 capturing around 65%. According to Gini coefficients and visual data, realize that many countries have Gini coefficients of 40 to 60% or higher. Now, visual data from the World Inequality Database shows significant disparities across the continent. And you can see where the map here indicates this inequalities areas. Like if you look at some parts of Algeria, up there is 20 to 35%. Come down here in the part of southern part of Africa is 48, almost above 50. There's a 48% inequality around. And then you look at the challenges you're having and the implication in terms of those taxation systems. You realize that there's issues to do with institutional and political issues. So there are challenges of low capacity, there's corruption, there's tax evasion, there's even illicit finance of law, there's an elite capture, they don't want to pay tax. You realize in political space, there's a weak social contract that exists where taxes are paid without visible services. There you go socially, you realize that the burden falls disproportionately on the poor and informal workers. Economically, this distorts the entire investment and limits public good, like issues to do with the health and education. With climate change at least trying to amplify this so-called risk. So the alternative argument that I'm trying to push is that out of this conversation is that I don't believe that Africa, with its rich oil, mineral, gas, still has to rely on personal and corporate taxes. We can replace that. And this is actually based on the rationale that resources are communal patrimony. Now, avoiding work incentives and enabling universal services. So let's just use our resources to facilitate services we need in the continent, pay whatever we need to pay, instead of relying too much on personal and corporate taxes. In fact, I don't know if that exists. There's somewhere I heard that, and I think if you go online and you check it, realize that there are around 19 to 20 countries in the world that do not tax their people. Basically, they use just resources. Look at the countries like in the UAE, in the Arab areas. They use their oil. Look at what Gaddafi did with Libya. In fact, it reached a level where the resources could even now pay people in their country. And that's a clear example that Africa can then survive without taxation. Just use our resources. So if you inspired with example with those Gulf states where there's no income tax, they're purely funded on their resources. So this is something that is possible. And something that will be more progressive and will be more equal. And people can get all resources as they need. So those are a few elements I'm trying to put forth. But you have witnessed that there are countries that come up with what you call sovereign funds. I think Kenya is trying to develop a sovereign fund. Botswana has a sovereign fund called the Pula Fund. And there are still also issues to do with the transparency issues. So there's transparent rules, such as fiscal discipline, are very key. So these sovereign funds can help us manage public or price volatility and invest in human capital and diversification. But we need to deal with transparency issues. So you can check on Botswana issue. There's Nigeria and Angola also trying to work on their resources a bit to see if they can generate something out of the resources they have. That's also something someone can check. Then there are a few issues. There are issues like the advantages of this element is that this argument I'm making is that include no tax drags on the poor if you have to go through the resources, if we use our resources, and it's potential for massive funding. But there can be issues with price volatility, there can be issues with depletion in terms of the resources, there can be issues with environmental damaging, or even corruption risk in the rentier states where maybe there were issues. But even despite of those issues that might rise from us using our resources to facilitate ourselves in terms of mainstream taxation, is something that is worth checking on. So that's the element I'm trying to put forth. And then just as a recommendation a bit, I'll say that one is that we need to have actual institutional reforms, whether you call it revolution or revolution at the institution, so that we can have this sovereign fund institution that can work. There are so many kinds of sovereign fund. I think China is having a big sovereign fund, but they're using the resources pulled together and then get the money. So these things we can do. We can also have Pan-African corporations, such as shared resource funds, investment in human capital and diversification, even monitoring all those resources through either transparency, citizen oversight is also very essential. So you see, like what you're having, the African Tax Administration Forum, they need to go beyond that so that they can actually get the continent where we're moving. But with good governance, resource funding could actually leapfrog traditional taxation. The outlook is optimistic, but conditional on politics, emphasizing the need for visionary governance to achieve equality. So basically, that's towards the end of my presentation. And I'll say that in conclusion, Africa taxation history reveal an extractive root and persistent gaps in the redistribution and inequality. Resource-based alternative will offer at least a bold, equitable path if paired with visionary governance. Policymakers, citizens, and researchers must try to prioritize this transparency and inclusion. This multi-angle approach actually shows that equality is achievable through smart resource and not just taxes. So thank you very much. I will be ready to take some questions and answers. I think I've been brief enough. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Brother Pigeon. Any questions on the presentation? Hello? Sorry, I'm on the phone. I can't see any hands up.
I've just put my hands
Chair,
up.
Okay, Sister
Chair,
Ida.
they should not
I
be
was
very harsh on me. They should really appreciate.
sorry.
Sister Ida, go ahead.
I was wondering if Brother Pigeon could suggest how most African governments could have a sovereign wealth fund, because I know, like in Ghana, we're so famous for our cocoa and maybe our gold, but out of that, is there a suggestion of a way forward towards the sovereign wealth funds of Africa? Thank you.
Chair, that question I'll push forward to an economist expert in the room, Brother Kwame, if he can help.
Very good.
What is the question? The
question is how African governments can have a sovereign wealth fund, because that was part of what was being talked about in the presentation. And I was wondering if Brother Pigman had any ideas as a way forward, for a way forward. Thank you.
So Satizomo, can I go ahead?
Yes, and I think was it Brother Christopher trying to answer as well?
Go ahead.
In that case, I'm happy to wait. I thought Pigeon pushed it to me, so I'm happy to wait.
You go ahead, and then Brother Christopher.
Okay. So, yeah. So, as far as so in terms of the taxation issue, Pigeon is right. In terms of the tax base, relying on the African individuals or African citizens, if you like, to generate the tax revenue is going to be problematic. Apart from the moral argument that the Pigeon made, there is also the logistical argument or reality, which is that majority of African countries, their economies and the majority of the people are operating in the informal economy, and so it will be hard to generate enough revenue from there. And the question, as we are discussing unification, the question for us is, can we generate revenue, or can Africa as a whole generate revenue in order to fund its development? And so the question of sovereign wealth fund is appropriate, because with the wealth that Africa has in terms of mineral resources, for instance, we should be in a position to set up wealth funds. Now, there are some wealth funds, sovereign wealth funds on the continent already. So Nigeria has a sovereign, the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, and you could consider them as a wealth fund if you like. They focus on infrastructure, stabilization, and future savings. Angola has an oil-based sovereign fund called Fundo Soberano de Angola. Algeria has the Revenue Regulation Fund. I understand is now less active. Libya used to have the Libya Investment Authority, and I think Brother Pigeon also mentioned that how they use their oil to create benefits for their people. Botswana, I understand, has a Pula Fund, and that is rooted in diamond revenues, and it's sometimes cited as a relatively successful case. Ghana had the Ghana Petroleum Fund. This is some years ago now. I remember we had big arguments over it, and the thieves were telling us that the money is not enough and how we shouldn't worry about it. But somehow the elites wanted to worry about it. Anyway, so the Ghana has the Ghana petroleum funds. So yes, so there are examples. Keep an eye on the time. Uganda has the petroleum fund, because you remember Uganda is now preparing for oil revenues. Tanzania has a sovereign wealth fund framework, which is gas driven. And Mozambique, as I understand it, is moving toward the LNG based fund. I think the problem for us is that we need Africa to have a unified, you see, this is what we are asking, we want. We want Africa to have a unified tax regime. You see, that is what we want. Now, if our minerals will be the basis for a sovereign wealth fund, then I think it's right for us to say that in order to put aside or to counter this divide and rule, that it is important that we have some kind of African Resource Corporation, which will be, if you like, the forum or the structure, with the powers, to make these resource decisions. So that for me is a worry, that if the AU is going to move towards the current club system it has, to providing the powers to the commission and other institutions, then it should do so that so that we can begin to have a common tax regime. Because apart from that, a lot of Africans are very wealthy, but they don't pay tax. So, Chair, I think I will stop there because of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Brother Christopher, did you want to contribute to that? Is he still around? No.
Yes, he is, but he may have just stepped up. The other two hands are up, Ifo and Sister Portia.
Brother Ifo.
Hello? Oh, hello.
Hello, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Anyway, once again, thanks very much for the opportunity.
Oh.
I'm so, I get so motivated when I hear stuff like this, because when I was 12 years, 13 years, when can Africans sit down, and the internet has made it very possible. The other brother was giving a historical blueprint about taxation. One thing about science, okay, if you go to school and you learn economy, law, medicine, and you don't even know the rationale behind what you are learning, you always learn, have the knowledge and degree, but you will be an object of what you are learning. Because if we realize that taxation came out of exploitation, that a system that has been created because of revenue, okay, what are the types of revenue that we have? Maybe you can learn something and adapt it to your system and develop it. That is where we are talking about the conscientism. So you cannot talk of conscientism and go back to the same old model of taxation once you exploit your people. Now, if you realize that we have two types of revenue in any given country at all, the first revenue is what people bring in terms of maybe exploitation, people buying and coming in with. And your second revenue is what you control within your local administration. There are some countries that importation and export is so high that the government only counts on in terms of external revenue, what comes in. There are some countries, they don't have those type of opportunities. So their revenue will be the local market in terms of the movement within the people that buy and sell. Now, let's take a very particular example, Ghana. You export, what's the name? Cocoa, all these raw materials, and you tax whatever taxation is. The taxation can be factible or can be usable when within our local government. For instance, I'm the general secretary or the vice chairman of whatever, and you pay me 200 cedis, and you cannot account for the time that I give to the government, and you pay me for the 200 cedis. They will come to a time, they will tell you that the revenue that we have with whatever we are as government and expenditure, it doesn't compensate because the money is not sufficient. Just because the money is there, but you people don't have, or we don't have the real meaning. indicators how to monitor timing in terms of whatever individual, from the president to the layman, the one who cleans the rubbish in the street of Accra. What is your time? For instance, you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning. You get to time your job at 8:30. Okay, when you get to work at 8:30, what is your time related to the job? What do you do before 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock before you go for 1 hour break? What is the money that you are given? Then how do we distribute the tax that we get as external tax that we as a government? If you people cannot do this thing, because it is very easy to calculate money that you get in revenue. But the difficult aspect, which is the very simple one, is the time related to job of all the individual. Let me just take an example like a company. Okay, you have a company whereby you have we have this type of I learn in Spanish, so maybe I have to be translating Spanish to English. Or okay, when you have a company which your capital, they have a legal money that you can invest in your company, which is authorized capital and subscribed capital, that you can expand the investment. Okay, then you have 500 workers. You have your human resource department. Okay, now if you don't know the movement and the value that every individual, every worker adds to the company, at the end of the month you have to pay everybody. How do you pay somebody who doesn't even add value to the productivity or the service? And that is where the problem is coming from. The problem is not our taxation, though it can be corruption or whatever. But the problem in itself, that is why Japan, they came out with this re-engineering of timing. Because when you have too much of activities, it is better you plan the time, but you don't plan your activities. If you plan your activities, you can never measure your time and the money related to time, because that is why when you go to the other advanced countries, they say time is money. How do you transfer time into money? So if we can monitor our external revenue and our local revenue, make sure that at least, for instance, look at the ladies at the small markets who buy and sell, all right? If you tell them, come and register your passport or your ID so that the local government can know what is the movement. There are some countries, they tell you, okay, look, the government want to give a loan, right? But before you get the loan, you have to register your business and you're going to give you about this minimum amount of, just so that you can have the adequate database to control how much is the local the informal business that is going on. Sometimes the informal business is even much more than the one that we see that, oh, this is money. And sometimes it is not like that. For instance, the way the Ghana started with the gold board, the illegal mining. How do you make the illegal mining have more money than the same national mining? It's something insane, just because they put a system that can control all the elements that is relating to that. So if we want to make good use of the taxation, there are certain indicators that we have to get it at first. Then talk with taxation, and most of the taxation, it is much more used for much more, how do we say it? These politicians use it, they get, how do you pay somebody who is a prime minister or who is a member of parliament, diet, transportation, this, and nobody says anything about that. They don't say anything about that. And somebody who is working within the sector, who is not any member of any political party, like let's take a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, have to wait 2, 3, 4 months to get his pay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Brother Christopher. Do I see, Brother
Ifo hands, yes. Thank
you.
Revolutionary greetings to you.
Yeah. Um, I am thinking that there, with regards to taxation, there are two things that I'm wondering on. One is the actual corporate tax, um, and for example, in Nigeria, there is corporate tax, but I don't think they actually tax it on that properly. And also the resources that are being stolen from the land through by creating violent situation and then avoiding paying tax, which is one of the things that's happening in central Nigeria, where they go in and because the land is not owned by the government of Nigeria, the land is owned by the indigenous people. And so any mining that happens, they have to pay taxation to the local kings or queens. So what they do is they send in military to basically blow up the place, and then the people flee, and then they declare that land as nobody occupies it. And then you have mostly Chinese and some other British and American companies that are coming and stealing the resources. So I'm wondering, how do we deal with those manufactured insecurities, which are ways in which corporate entities are avoiding paying taxes? Because I think if all of them actually paid for taxes and paid royalties for what they're stealing, we would not have any issues with poverty. Thank you.
Okay, anybody wants to answer that question? Or is it Brother Pigeon?
Yeah, Sister Chizomo, I think Brother Ifo's question is very relevant, and taking into account what Brother Christopher also said. I think at the end of the day, we have to have a continental regime, because the problems are common. The problems in Ghana will not be very different from Kenya or from South Africa, etc., etc. So, I mean, if you look at the table that Brother Pigeon shared with us on the screen, you see, for instance, that Nigeria, which is the biggest economy on the continent, if you look at how much tax they are raising, it's very, very low. You know, and then when you look at Tunisia in North Africa, they seem to be the leading country that is raising the most tax. Then we have Mali also raising a lot of tax. Togo raises tax. So I think the answer is that we have to have an African tax regime that will solve the problem for us. That is so. As someone, or as a group that is interested in the unification of Africa, I think that would be our argument, that we want the heads of states to empower the African the Commission to take steps to unify our tax regime on the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question myself. Two questions actually, or is it three? Anyway, so we have a situation in Malawi, especially this week, whereby I think the government is trying to, it has digitized taxing, including VAT and all that stuff. So, as it has been presented, not a lot of wealthy people pay. In my country, the economy is run by Asians. So they do whatever they like. They run the country. They dictate what happens, the rise and fall of it. So this week, they all closed their shops. They're refusing to trade because they don't like the taxing system, the digitizing one, for the same reason that they will be tracked in what they're doing and what they've sold and what not, and therefore have to pay the taxes. So we are at a shutdown at the moment. Shops have been closed with Asians protesting. The second one I find a very confusing or disturbing tax is on properties. So if you've got a property and you're letting it out, the rent you're getting, you have to pay on it what they call withdrawal tax. I'm not an economist. I'm useless at this. That's my weakest link. So I don't understand the withdrawal tax, but you have to pay 10%. Is it 20% now? It used to be 10. 20% on all the rent you're collecting. On top of that, my understanding is if you're earning any money, you have to pay income tax on it. Secondly, you have to pay city rates. Thirdly, you have to pay housing rates. That's about how many? 4 over the rent you're getting. So it's those kind of tax regimes that are very, and one minister raised it in Parliament that the taxing in Malawi is very, very high compared to other countries. They need to reconsider it. And then the finance minister was like, oh yes, from April we're going to do A, B, C, D, which was irrelevant from what the question was. So I was just wondering if in other countries it's like that. And also the other thing is in my country, civil servants, anybody in the public sector will claim what they call allowance. So if I'm presenting like this here, I need an allowance. If I have to come to go and work over there, I need an allowance. If I turn up for this meeting, I need an allowance. Kind of being paid twice to do the same job, as if the salary doesn't cover all that. So when they've collected all these allowances, because I think they get it in cash or, yeah, something like that. Do they pay tax on it as an income, or it just goes, because the allowances are quite higher than the actual salary, because they collect for every single movement and every single activity, on top of asking citizens to pay for any service. If they come to office for this and that, they also have to pay for them to get a service. So you just wonder.
Yeah. So, Sister
Even
Grace,
hello.
to answer that question specifically, the state recognizes that it doesn't pay its employees enough. So that system is used to compensate them, and so they are not taxed. That is the reality. They are not taxed. So those allowances are not taxed. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else has a question?
Yes, Sister Grace, through the chair. I wanted to ask Brother Kwame about Mali. He says they have that they are collecting a lot of tax, and I wondered if he could explain it a bit more. I did put it in the chat, but
yeah, no, fine.
Thank you.
Can I go ahead, Sister Grace?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we've got just 11 minutes left, so I'll be very brief. Yeah, Sister Ida, I was going by the chart that Brother Pigeon shared. I don't know if you can see it. It should still be on the screen. So Mali is the fourth country: Tunisia, Togo, Mauritius, and Mali. So according to this chart, valued added taxes are negative in Mali, but Mali has a social security system where there are social security contributions. Then it also says that Mali has its personal tax rate is very low. Apparently, Tunisia has the highest personal income tax base on the continent. Some countries like Somalia have a negative personal income tax base, but that Mali has a tax base, personal income, although it's low. It also has corporate income tax. Now that the French have left, I don't know how that will turn out. But not that the French were paying tax anyway. But it does say on the chart that they have a corporate income tax base. But the largest contribution, according to the chart, is, as I said, from social security contributions. And then there is some from other taxes on goods and services. So I hope that answers your question. Then they have other taxes. I hope that answers the question you asked, Sister Ida.
Thank you. I missed out. I saw a graph, but I didn't fully understand it. So thank you for explaining it.
That's fine. It's a fourth country, so you can see. And then the key is at the top. What they pick the pictures mean. Yeah. Thank you, Sister Chizomo. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions?
There's a hand up, Sister Chizomo. There's a one, Brian.
Okay. Go ahead, Brother Brian. Sorry, I can't see your hand from here.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to join you, even though I came a bit late. And it's a very beautiful conversation about tax processes in Africa and compared to other established institutions. So I wanted to give my question or in form of opinion on the ongoing discourse. And I want to say up front, this is my second time being here, and I enjoy the discussion that we're having, especially when the last speaker spoke, and it really grabbed my imagination. So my input is simple like this. I believe the whole architecture of tax, remittance, tax administration, and the other end of it where it's redistributed to social services, I think it needs a bit of overhaul. There's a lot of bureaucracy in between, which sometimes people might say is necessary to make sure the process is not corrupted, or the process is managed. Maybe there are good argument of bureaucracy on the tax systems, and I understand. But I believe with the nature of our African economies, and with the gaps that we need to achieve to reach where we are self-sufficient, where we give the best of the basic services, I believe we need a different architecture on the tax system. And it should be as simple as much, because I believe the common I believe or ideology of tax system was like the rich should pay more, so that the poor are supported with the social services that we want to administer to them. So given that baseline, I believe we aren't there, and maybe we need to rethink maybe the tax process. I don't want to go into specific, maybe how this country is doing this and that, but I believe that maybe a rethink of this system should be taken into consideration, so that in the end we grow, we can quantify, we can trace the path that we began this process here, and this is where we reach. So many of the discussion always touch on maybe efficiency on some aspect of collection or administration, but not maybe the addressing the whole architecture and the infrastructure of tax administration, remittance, and the other end where it's being reissued to the public in terms of social services and impact. So that's my observation in it. Thank you very much.
Oops. Thank you. The other one, I'll just mention another one that gets me. It's the there's those little phones. We call them I can't remember what they're called, but they're used for paying transactions. So it's like paperless money. So people have their money on the phone. They pay for this, they pay for that, they transfer the money to a relative. But every time that transfer is happening, money is just being deducted. The one who receives has to be deducted. The one sending has to be deducted. And it goes on and on and on. And like you say,
e-levy.
Oops. Sorry?
E-levy. It's called e-levy.
It's called e-levy.
Yeah, e-levy. Electronic levy.
Yeah, so
tax.
I feel it's just too much for people who have very little money. And so now they have to ask the person sending them money to say, oh, can you add the deduction money? And then the same amount is just going from one person to another. By the time it gets that side, I don't know how much it's paid to the phone, to the company. Anyway.
Sister Grace, my hand is up. In light of what you've just said, what I put my hand up for was Brother Brian made me think, oh, why aren't we being, they always say that remittance to African countries is one of the biggest things that happens. And I was thinking, so then why aren't we being slightly taxed on that remittance? I know they tax us to send it, but that's the companies who are sending it. I was putting my hand up to say, oh, there should be a tax on that slightly, because even when I might remit anything, I would also like the country to benefit rather than just the person you're sending it to. So when you came in and said about money and e-levy, I'm thinking, oh, okay, but I still think that seeing remittance is such a big thing to a lot of African countries. Maybe those remitting should also be taxed. Thank you.
Yeah. Chair, my hand is up.
Your hand is up, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
go ahead.
I agree with Sister Ida. In that case, we must also vote. Because right now we don't have votes in our countries. Ghana, for instance, has passed a law that we should vote. But the Electoral Commission has not operationalized it. So we cannot have taxation without voting. So if I'm going to send money to Ghana and it's going to be taxed, then I have to have a say in
the money.
Thank you.
I have no objection to that at all. Thank you.
Yeah, we've campaigned for that. We don't get any responses. We've just got the dual citizenship. Everything else is yeah. So we've got about 8 minutes left.
No, we have 2 minutes.
Oh, I thought you said 5 minutes past. Okay.
It's fine. We can finish at 5 minutes past. If everybody agrees, that's fine.
Well, if there's not much to say.
But the IFO's hand is up.
Can you see any hands?
Yes, but
yes.
IFO.
Yes. My suggestion to the voting thing is actually more radical than that. I think we should abolish all the colonial states because they were not created by us. They had a meeting in Berlin. There were no Africans there. We didn't decide that. So we should stop pretending like those states make any sense to us, apart from to effectively steal our resources. And we need to find out who we are, who our traditional land bases are, and we should go with that, not with colonial boundaries. And I don't believe in democracy. I believe we should have our grandmothers decide what we do. And I think we will have much, much better than this foolishness that we've been following that has not worked for anybody, except for the select few. I think if we put our grandmothers in charge, we'll be all good. I don't need any vote. Grandmothers tell us what to do and we'll go do it. That's the only thing I will vote for. I will vote for the grandmothers to take over and no more men in leadership. I yield the mic.
People are still coming in. Not sure what's going on.
It's now 9 o'clock, unfortunately.
The argument on democracy is growing. People don't seem to understand it and the purpose of it and whether it's genuine given who the people who started it are doing. Confusing. So anybody else has something to say before we close?
I'm surprised nobody responded to my suggestion that we should give all the power to women.
The women,
yeah. And specifically grandmothers.
In my country, it's a matrilineal society, so we have the power.
as
No,
it should
this,
be.
Sister Grace, let me thank you for sharing because it's been an interesting discussion. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, brother Kwame.
Yes, thank you so much, Sister Grace, for sharing. I agree with Sister Ida. It's been an interesting discussion. Even though we didn't start on time, we only had 1 hour, but it's been excellent. Thank Brother Pigeon also for sharing his research, and thank all those who spoke. We appreciate your contribution. We know you are all very busy people, but you always find time to sit around the fire like we are doing now, electronic fire. Brother Christopher, who has mentioned that he cherishes such a space. So no, thank you so much all for coming. Mr. Shaza, sorry you arrived slightly late, but it could be the link. Some have said it's not working properly, so Brother Pigeon and I will have a look at that. Brother Pigeon, are you able to make announcements? Because I've shared the rest of April's sessions on the screen. Thank you.
yes, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Just one statement to summarize my presentation is that we cannot continue to tax the people of Africa while the wealth of Africa is being extracted to somewhere outside, to where the so-called developed countries now have low taxation, or even if it's high taxation, they get all the social services they need out of the resources that they extract from us, while our government are busy taxing people heavily just to run a government, and the resources are being exploited and extracted. I think it's not viable. It may not take us long, and it's time that we need to think how we depend on our resources so that we can then facilitate and provide services. Now, Brother Kwame has shared the topic for next week: science, technology, and sovereignty, the space program. If you have anything in regards to that, if you can do research about it, please get in touch, do some research, and we'll give you an opportunity to present. Get in touch with me if you want to present anything on that, on science, technology, sovereignty, and space program. Now, Monday, we will continue the Pan-African Reading Club, where we've been reviewing Dr. George Aiti. We just go to chapter 8, actually, and it's moving on in very interesting issues. We are talking about revolution reversals. What do we have to avoid in order not to lose the gains of the revolution? Now, on Thursday, we will continue. We've just started chapter 4. Very interesting. Now we are in the heart of consciousness. And the text that was shared in our poster is actually the introduction of chapter 4. Thought without practice is blind, and practice without action is empty. I think something like that. So join us on Thursdays as we do the review of chapter 4. We started it, and we'll go on to chapter 4 maybe for the next month or a year or so. Just get in touch with us. Don't miss that class. The next Saturday, we pick it from where the commercial. Now, the recordings of this week will always be available from tomorrow. So I'll do them every Sunday. So I'll be sharing the recording from Monday, Thursday, and this Saturday on our YouTube channel from tomorrow. That's what I have to say for now, and thank you very much. Back to you, Brother Kwame.
Yeah, Brother Pigeon, I think we should remind them to go on the channel. And then please, when you go there, subscribe or like. We are hoping if we can attract the numbers necessary, we can begin to generate some income. Our Zoom costs money, and then we can use those monies to pay, and then pay other expenses as well that we incur. That's it from me. I'm going to stop the recording now. And
is it possible to put the link in the chat so people can click on it?
Yes, I think we can do that. Let me stop the recording for now, and then I'll oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording.